Part 1. Using the Senses. Chapter 1. The world is your teacher. Have you ever heard the proverb, you learn something new every day? Well, I'd like to put it to you that we not only learn something new every day, that we also learn something new every moment, every second, because of the sights, the sounds and the smells which are bombarding us as human beings, not only every day, but also every second. I'd like to put it to you that every single moment you will gain some kind of information, some knowledge, which helps you become aware of life. Everything you hear informs you of your surroundings, and you might hear people outside or building work going on, and that could start up at any moment, and that will inform you of what's going on in that situation, whether you wanted to know that or not. Every sound you will hear at every moment will be informing you of the moment, of the situation. And yes, people can call you up on the phone at any moment and inform you of something that you've never ever thought about before, and you've learnt for the very, very first time on that date. Somebody could walk up to you right now and inform you of something that you have never thought about before and give you an opportunity that you never had before. Anything could happen at any moment, and you never know what is going to happen, so when it does, it's all important to be listening to absorb everything that person or that thing or that situation in every moment can tell us. We can learn from this moment by moment, instant by instant, about our world and about our surroundings, because it does change. Life is never the same every single day. Life is never the same every single moment. Even if you have a repetitive job and you expect it to be the same old faces, the same machinery, and you could probably do that job blindfold by now, even if you expect the world to be the same, it won't be. Everybody will have a different conversation, a different tale to tell, and you will get to know about something that you didn't know yesterday. All you have to do is to pin your ears back and to be listening, because if you are talking at that moment, or thinking about something else, or offering some kind of answer or explanation towards them and not listening, then you will miss their gift, the gift of knowledge. And so these people offer you an opportunity. They chose you to visit you, to call you on the telephone. They trust you enough to be able to tell you information or to offer you opportunities. So if your boss walks up to you out of the blue and offers you the opportunity to work extra long and for just a little extra pay, then they must trust you enough to get that job done on time and to a good standard. Otherwise they would have offered it to someone else. That is an opportunity, and you may learn something about your character and your outward persona from the fact that they are offering you that opportunity. So even your boss walking up to you and saying, look, you can have to work overtime, sorry, but that's just the way it is, they must trust you enough to say you will do that and you will get the job done. Otherwise they'd say, let's not bother. You'll learn something new every day, and most of that will come from listening, either through listening to other people, or even when you are reading a book, you are listening to your inner voice and you are watching your imagination. Even when you are listening to yourself in a conversation, or in a thought, or in a daydream, you will still be listening to some voice, something, at some time. The trick is to listen to the right things, to listen to your inner voice and then to decide what to do for the best. It's about what you listen to, not necessarily about who you listen to, because it really is up to us whether we decide to use the information that people tell you for a productive reason, or whether to bear that in mind, or whether to discard it. Every piece of information that you learn is valuable. You can't necessarily discard every piece of information just because it might not necessarily fit in with your view of the world. In fact, sometimes it's best to hold on to information that contradicts your view of the world, and then you have something to contrast your view against, because a balanced opinion is sometimes a fairer way to negotiate a conversation than a restricted view. Certainly, an open conversation is the one where people offer multiple views, and a closed conversation is one where people have a stance and they like to climb upon that stance and wave their flag from the top of it and say, "This is my view, and if you go against that view, then you must be wrong." You must listen to as many sources as possible in order to base a valid reason and an explanation for your views. Otherwise, your views will be trampled underfoot, and there will always be someone in that room who says, "You are talking a load of rubbish and I know better." If at that point you refer to an author and something you have read in a book and can quote it, another person in that room might say, "Yes, but I have read other books and more books and different books, and those books contradict what you say. I have spoken to other people, many different people, and those people contradict what you say." Of course, they will have negotiated a way to be around the people that conform to their imagination of life, and so they will find the people that corroborate their views, and they will argue from that standpoint. So if their argument is chocolate ice cream is the best flavour, they will have read the books and spoken to the people who agree that chocolate ice cream definitely is the best flavour, and will disregard all the other flavours in that factor. So as a philosopher, I'd recommend reading about chocolate ice cream and vanilla and strawberry and mint and all the other flavours which make up the potential of ice cream. Therefore, you must know what you are talking about. Otherwise, you'll be going down the road of being self-righteous, and that is not where a philosopher should hope to be. Arrogance and self-righteous come from the fact that a philosopher knows nothing, and they are expressing the fact that they know nothing. If they really did know anything, then they'd have so many views on so many points of explanation that they wouldn't even know where to begin. So arrogance makes way for humbleness, and it's true, the more you know, the wiser you get, and the more humble you are from having known that in the first place. He who knows nothing has the loudest voice. He who knows everything has the quietest whisper. That's what they say, and it tends to be true. Many people, when they embark on the road of knowledge, know a little bit, and they brag about those knowledge rights and think they know enough to speak about. Unfortunately, bragging rights doesn't usually get you very far in life, and knowing a little bit, as they say, can be very dangerous because you are not aware of the full facts. And so it is important when you are speaking, which will be the subject of our next chapter, to have full access to the facts. And that doesn't necessarily mean checking out everything on the internet and regarding that as gospel. Many things on the internet are false. Many things that we know to be true are false. And certainly watching programs like QI and Mastermind, programs which are designed to inform us of the facts instead of superstition, we may find that what we thought was real was in fact false, and what we said to be true is in fact incorrect. So many times we can be proven incorrect just by different people quoting different sources, and if you haven't read those sources, you may appear ignorant. That is, being unaware of the full facts. And as a philosopher, that is not where you want to be. Ignorance is not bliss as a philosopher. Philosophers like to know more. The more they know, the more they want to know, and the more answers, the more questions. That is the road of a philosopher. Chapter 2. Being the observer. We can learn so much by listening, and we can also learn so much by seeing as well. Although, as we shall see in the following chapters, seeing isn't always the truth, it isn't always real, and seeing isn't always believing either. But what you see is certainly just as important as what you hear. and it can be just as valid a way to absorb knowledge, not just by learning something new every day, but you'll be learning something new every moment, every second. Whatever you see, even if it's just a piece of litter on the floor, you will learn that that is there and it wasn't there before, so you may unconsciously bend down and pick that up and remove the item just by a casual glance. Taken to the extreme, seeing can inform us of many things that we would not have been aware of any other time. For example, you may notice when someone is speaking, their human body language will often give away their innermost thoughts. And so if we are observant, we may hear and appreciate what they may say by their tone of voice and the sound they are making, but also we may appreciate what they are trying to say by subtle expressions of the eyebrows and the nose and the mouth and waving of the arms and the eyes looking in certain directions. And we can see whether they are telling the truth or lying. We can see how much they know about a certain subject and how much they are trying to make things up. We can see how much they are determined to see their objection through and how lenient they may be to your point of view. So body language is all important, not just for your friends and your family and your partner, but also your work colleagues as well, because glancing around at any moment while you're at work, you'll instantly notice what your work colleagues are up to, even if they aren't speaking, and that will inform you of the situation. And sometimes being aware of the situation, being the outsider looking into a situation, is the way that you can see the broader aspects, and you can step in and you can change that situation for the better. But realise that when we are noticing things in our everyday moment-to-moment environment, realise at that point that these things are informing our minds, and we don't need to be speaking to appreciate the things which are going around in our audible environment. We certainly don't need to be speaking to observe things that are happening in our everyday lives. So looking and listening is certainly more important than speaking, because while we are speaking, to a certain degree at least, we retreat from the outer world as our focus moves inwardly. And in that precise moment, we are no longer aware of our environment, we are just aware of our immediate conversation and what is going on in our minds. So it is very easy when speaking to tune out of the real world and to tune into our own world, to lose sight of the moment, and silence is an easy way to get back to that. The more we learn about the world and about the situation of life, the more informed we will be, the broader our minds will be, and the more opportunities we will be able to make by making those connections in the mind. We will take a closer look at assimilation and how to make those connections in the mind in Chapter 5. Chapter 3. Our world is not perfect. The world isn't perfect, and it certainly does not conform to our ideal imagination of how it should be. Now, that might be an obvious thing to state to some people out there, but to really appreciate that fact is to open up a new opportunity in your life, and it certainly was in my life. The world isn't geared up towards our expectations, and certainly the more we expect from life, the less life tends to deliver, and we may take things for granted and put too high a price on things which are sometimes pretty trivial to other people, or sometimes pretty mundane to other people, and we put targets and limits on life when targets and limits and standards may not necessarily be the happiest way to live life. So let's take a look at that. I realised one day that I was working in an environment where bosses would regularly walk up to me and give me extra things to do in that day, and there were not enough hours to cover those extra things, and I would argue and complain and point out the fact that there simply was not enough time to do those, and I would be late out of work and there was no overtime, so I would have to do much more for exactly the same money. And it got to the point where I became pretty miserable about that status quo, and I realised the fact that it didn't matter how much I complained to the boss about having this work to do. It also didn't matter how much I complained to my business colleagues and my friends and my family about all this. If I had many jobs to do, 9, 10, 11 jobs to do during the day, it didn't matter how many, I'd still have to get on with it to earn the money, and in fact the sooner I got on with it, the better. Because, as they say, soonest fixed, soonest mended, and I realised the sooner I started on these jobs, the sooner they would be over. So I learned, instead of speaking back to the boss, I learned to say yes and just to turn around and get on with it. The first thing that happened as a result of this new outlook was that all the jobs were completed much quicker, because I wasn't dragging my feet and complaining that I had to do those things, completely wasting my time talking to the boss. I just got on with it. The second thing that happened was my opportunity to appreciate life happened, because I wasn't concentrating my thoughts inwardly on, oh, this isn't a very nice job, and oh, I'm so miserable and I just want to get out of here. Instead, I was doing the job and I had my eyes open looking around and my ears open, and my hands were busy doing whatever they were doing, and I wasn't focused inwardly, I was looking outwardly. The third thing that happened was I was in a better mood than I had been recently, probably as a result of getting the job done much more quickly and not wasting time arguing with the boss. It just saved me a lot of time and effort, and at the end of the day, if I didn't quite manage to do those jobs, then certainly I tried my best and delegated those jobs to other people and managed to do as much as I could in the allocated time, but I wouldn't stand around and complain if I was 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late, because, to be honest, accepting those jobs meant I'd accepted that responsibility, so yet again, might as well close the mouth, open the eyes and the ears, and just get on with it. From that point on, my relationship at work was transformed. I realised that listening to the boss, listening to other people, observing the customers, observing the bosses, and instead of it being all mouth, it was now all observance. And I found people were more willing to speak to me because I wasn't in a grumpy mood. Managers were more lenient on me and kinder, and they wouldn't give me the hard jobs to finish at the end of the day, knowing that I'd appreciate that. And it's actually ironic that they didn't give me the hard work when I didn't complain, but they gave me the hard work when I did complain, as a retribution for that and as a direct result. I realised that my life wasn't perfect, and that was a shock at first, to know that everything in my life wasn't perfect. It was also a shock to realise that I was not perfect, and I was responsible for all this in my life. Surely my life was okay and functional. I had a life and I was living it, but to realise that people aren't always perfect, and my standards, timekeeping standards, etiquette standards, ways of being, all these things weren't being helpful to me, and my attitude needed to change in order for my life to change, and having done so, it did. I felt like my way of being was rather foolish, having looked at the situation from the outside looking in, and I realised who I was being in that situation. The person that I was being, the way that I was acting, was not me. It was just me in that situation, me being at work surrounded by bosses. That wasn't the real me, that was the me that I'd just habitually gotten myself into over the years. And so I changed that person from the inside, because I really wanted to be a different person on the outside. But on that day, on that very special day, I discovered that the world was my teacher, that every single person in the world that I'd ever met, and I would meet in the days and the years to come, would be my teacher, and that if I was talking over them while they were trying to tell me something, I might miss out on a lot of things that I could learn. And it takes everybody in life and everything in life to make life, from the absolute genius to the ultimate fool, because even the fool can tell us about our lives and can remind us about that side of our lives which does take life just a bit more carefree and just a bit less seriously. Taking things a bit less seriously and a bit more lightly in life is certainly a good opportunity to live life more easily. Chapter 4. The world is the product of who we are being. Everybody would love to live life more easily. If life was fluid and smooth, then everything would flow like cogs and wheels in motion, and everything would run great. The only kibosh on that, the only thing which stops that from doing that, is us. We choose what begins in our lives, and we choose what ends in our lives, so life begins and ends with us. Our decisions, our point of view, will affect our lives, and to some degree the world is also a reflection of us, and the outside world is a mirror of our inside world. Life never appears to be the same way in the minds of two different people, because those two different people have two different minds, and so the world, or rather the universe in which we live in, is the illusion of our individual minds. So what we receive from life is to a certain extent a reflection of how we perceive it in the first place. Let me give you a few examples. If we walk into a situation miserable and grumpy, and we speak to a sales assistant miserable and grumpy saying, "My machine didn't work, I must have a refund and I demand to see the manager," then it's going to make that person feel terrible, it's going to compound your own misery, and you're going to drag the manager out and make everybody feel miserable, and the whole thing will descend into an unhappy situation. Or if you walked into the same store with a smile on your face with the receipt and said, "My machine doesn't work, may I have a replacement?" you may greet the lady with a smile, and you would receive a smile and courteous apologies, and everything would ascend into a place of opportunity. And it's the same if you walk into a child's bedroom. You may see the litter all over the floor and the toys everywhere, with crayon all over the walls, and you might find things ripped and broken and torn. So if you walk into that situation really angry and start throwing things around, the child will eventually get angry and start throwing things around, because that child, just like everything else in this world, is a reflection of who we are being. So if you don't listen to the child, then the child won't listen to you. If you lay down the law and say you must, then the child will dig in and say, "Why should I?" or "Yes sir." And none of those "why should I's" and "yes sirs" is really advantageous to a child growing up. But if you walk through that door happy and smiling and said, "I've got something wonderful to give you, all you have to do is tidy up a bit, throw these items in the trash can," and you hand the child a cleaning material and say, "All you have to do is to clean that wall," and it's a race, let's see how long it takes you, "I don't think you can do it in less than 5 minutes, go," and you might even join in with the child and clean the wall together. You then transform that situation. Instead of throwing things around and being heavy, they become light and fun. And so it's all about how you approach a situation. Even if someone is determined to get on your nerves and determined to make you angry, it's up to us whether we fall for that or whether we ignore that and maintain a calm, thoughtful environment for that situation. Because certainly if we go into a situation angry, then the other person might conform, and if the other person is trying to provoke us by becoming angry, then if we are open, if we have our eyes and our ears open and not our mouth, we have the choice whether to conform, to go with that, or to say to yourself, "Actually, I'm going to rise above that. I'm not going to fall for your trap. That was part of your game, and I'm not going to go that way. I've defeated your maze, and in fact I'm going to introduce something, a completely different subject, a light and a fun subject, to take your mind off that, And yes, you have had a really hard day, haven't you, dear? And I appreciate that, but let's do something fun and different, and let's blow out. So that's certainly two different ways of handling an argument, a storm which is brewing up, something bad that's going to happen at any time, can be averted if your eyes and your ears are open to the fact, and people will give you a little warning before they blow up and blow off and rip your head off for something that maybe you've done or maybe they expected you to do. Just remember, as soon as you stop listening to them and listening to you and what you want, then they stop listening to you and they start listening to them and what they want. And when their eyes and ears are closed, then they aren't going to budge from the situation and it's going to descend. And so what you have to do is to keep your eyes and ears open so that they do, and so that the situation can arise and descend out of that potential destructive period and that row and that argument, because nobody likes that. That is certainly not the easiest way to live life. We'll take another look at the subject of confrontation in part 7. So it's all about awareness, and again, sometimes we can focus our awareness internally on our mind and externally on our environment. Sometimes our mind plays tricks on us, as we shall see in later chapters, and our mind can't always be defended as the truth in any given situation. Sometimes we may make up things or put 2 and 2 together and make 5, and we don't realise that. So in this chapter, I think it's important to realise that it's not only about what you say, and it's more about what you look at, what you listen to, and what you appreciate in life that will help you develop in life and will help you avoid saying things and doing things that you didn't mean to say and that you really didn't mean to do in the heat of the moment. Because it's very easy to do things in the heat of the moment. A quick knee-jerk reaction, the first thing that pops into your head, and if that means getting angry and throwing things around, then that might happen. And if it's to say something nasty and to drag up the past and to make everybody's life miserable as a first knee-jerk reaction, then that's what might happen if you aren't aware of yourself and to what you are thinking and listening to what you are thinking to stop yourself from doing that. Even if it means biting your tongue and biting into an apple instead and really chomping that thing instead of chomping down on your partner, well, maybe that's an easier thing to do because you were aware of the situation and you realised that vocalising that situation wouldn't make things any easier. In fact, it would just create tension in the room and make everything really much harder, and really it's your problem, and really your best way to deal with it is to realise that the world is not perfect and the world does not live up to your expectations. It might go some way there, it might go 80% of the way there if people find you appealing and they want to do things for you and they want to make you happy. If you are miserable and people don't want to make you happy, then that figure will go down. And if you are really grumpy and you make demands on people, then the world will probably go somewhere towards your way, somewhere towards your ideal. But people will make mistakes and will make you just as grumpy as you were before, and really you will not get anywhere in life. You will always find something to be grumpy about. So this course is finding the opposite to that. It's finding the path where you'll always find something to be happy about, and getting back to the moment, the real moment. Your eyes are open, your ears are open, and just gazing out of the window you might be able to see nature and the mere sight of a bird flying past. It has never flown past your window before, it may never do that again. The bird migrates all over the world, and you seeing that bird on that moment, on that day, is so unique that it belies the essence of nature itself. You might see a caterpillar on a leaf, you might see a sun ray sparking through the clouds. The sun ray has never come through those clouds before because it's only just being emitted by the sun, and you'll never ever get to see the same sun ray again. So appreciate that while it's happening, because as I alluded to in chapter 1, life is happening for the very first time right now. It is also happening for the very last time right now. You are only alive once every day, and so if you don't seize the day, you've missed it. There is no way back, only forwards. So, no matter what is happening in your life right now, appreciate it while it's happening. You can thank your lucky stars that something worse isn't happening. Unfortunately, something better isn't happening. But whatever is going on in your life, it is happening. And it's happening at a tremendously fast rate all around you right now. It's about appreciating that and learning something new every moment. Not just every day, but every moment. And closing that mouth and opening those eyes and those ears to that moment to really appreciate it. And you'll find from that moment on, you will have not only a different outlook in life, but people will approach you differently and with more respect. In the next part, we will discover how to assimilate what we've looked at, what we've learnt, and what we've listened to, because it's not what we do, it's what we make of it. It's not the situation itself, it's what we turn that situation into. So let's learn how to assimilate any situation the easy way in the next chapter.